The debate around 650B versus 700C for gravel and adventure riding has kind of been done to death, but I don't think it's been done very well. So I'm here to demystify the debate after roughly a year with 2 bikes, 3 different wheel sets, and about 7 different tires on my experiences with running 650B and 700C. It's all real-world experiences and practical advice that you need to know if you're thinking of making a switch or buying a new bike with either system. Keep in mind, I do have to stick to sort of general principles here and may not be able to give super specifics on everything, but that is just the way to get this video a watchable length. And with that said, let's jump in and go for it. Some people will be here because they're thinking of switching out the 700C wheel and tire system they have to 650B. And I'm going to lay down some advice for those people at the top. There's no practical reason to spend money switching wheel and tire setups for less than a 10mm difference. I call this the 10mm rule. So for example, your bike might top out at 700 by 43 to 45 and 650 by 45 to 48. That's a very, very common tire clearance nowadays. In that environment, there's really no reason to change out what you have. You just don't gain enough from doing the swap, and swapping out a full wheel and tire combo is going to be expensive. I think the magical crossover is at roughly 10mm of difference. So say you have a maximum tire size of 650 by 40, but you can get 650 by 50 or even 2.0 or 2.1, then I do think it does start to be worth it at that point. The difference is big enough that it does make sense. If you are going from 700 by 40 or 43 to 650 by 48, I just don't think it's worth it. This kind of works in reverse as well, because some bikes are getting spec'd with 650B by default nowadays. If the difference is less than 10mm, save your money. So again, 650 by 48 to 700 by 40, I just don't really see the ROI for that. So think about the 10mm rule. Okay, that's out of the way now, so let's talk handling. And generally speaking, bigger tires means a bigger tire tread diameter and slower steering. And the opposite is true of smaller tires, where you get sharper or twitchier steering with smaller wheels. So 650Bs give sharper handling, and that can be great fun. But that doesn't necessarily mean everybody needs or wants that. A 650B wheel and tire combination has noticeably smaller overall diameter compared to a 700C, and that changes your fork trail. Trail is the measurement when you crunch head angle, fork offset, and the total diameter of your tire when it's on the rim. And that is a major determinant of how your bike is going to handle. I do really enjoy how a 650B wheel and tire combo sharpens up the steering. It does make riding a lot more fun, especially in technical terrain where you've got a lot of tight corners. Something like the Bossy Grit really did liven up substantially when I went down to 650 by 50 because it had fairly relaxed front end on it and the steering wasn't super fast to begin with. So that bike becomes a lot more lively and a lot more fun. Something like the Grove RAD was already razor sharp even with 700C wheels, so going down to 650B just made it extra sharp. Still a lot of fun, but probably not very necessary. It's all about context. What do you want your bike to do and what is your style of riding? If you ride a lot of trails on your gravel bike, then 650 can be a great way to sharpen it up and have a bit more fun in technical corners. If you don't need that, if you're just doing general everyday gravel grinding, 700C is going to be fine. 650B wheels drop your bottom bracket down closer to the ground, and that can make for more pedal striking, which isn't much fun for you and isn't very good for your equipment, so it's a pretty important consideration. How much your BB height changes is really dependent on your frame's geometry, so I can't really speak on behalf of everything here. Across gravel, adventure, and cyclocross, there's a huge range of diversity, and each bike is usually optimized around a different range of tires. The end result of that can be some added pedal striking. Here is the crank off the Grove, which I use Panaracer Gravel Kings with 650 by 48, and as you can see, there is quite a lot of gouging and scratching going on there because I balked it on a whole lot of rocks. That started happening a lot more when I switched down to the 650 by 48 because that bike is pushing it with its bottom bracket height. It is quite low. By contrast, the Bossy, which is hanging on the wall over there, does not have the same marks on it since I dropped down to 650. The higher clearance just means that it doesn't happen as much. Here we have a simple visual representation of my bikes. First the Grove with 700 by 40 and the Bossy with 650 by 50. And I've drawn a line across the top of the tires and roughly along the through axles. So you can see the change is quite dramatic at the top of the tire. 650 by 50 is still quite a lot smaller than 700 by 40. The advice then is to be careful when you think about going down to a smaller wheel size. It can mean more pedal striking, which is bad for your gear, it's bad for your riding, and it can make you crash. So keep that in mind. On the roads and trails, there's a major difference between wider and narrower tires. Wider tires means more air volume, greater comfort, and a bigger contact patch meaning more grip, and better ability to smash over bumpy sections. I'm at the stage now where I'll basically use the widest version of the tire I want that the frame can allow. I just don't really see any practical drawbacks to that. You can argue that it's a bit heavier and maybe adds a little bit of rolling resistance, but I don't really care about that stuff when I'm out having a nice time on my bike. I think the gravel should be that discipline where you can kind of just switch off all that sort of noise and just focus on enjoyment first. That means I'll take comfort and grip every day of the week. And when you're deep into a ride, the amount of bumping and vibrations that are going through your body can really change how you feel. You can get more tired, you can feel more worn out and far less comfortable, and I love doing a big gravel day with a lot of hours in the saddle. In the choice of 700 versus 650 then, I'll go back to the 10mm principle. I will take 650 by 50 over anything below 700 by 40, and at the other end, I will take 700 by 45 over anything in 650. That is just how I like to ride, and I will take the bigger wheel and tire diameter if I can get it. Now weight is an interesting part of this because 650B wheels are smaller, therefore lighter, therefore the obvious choice, right? Nope. 650B tires tend to be quite a lot heavier, so you can really lose all of the weight gains that you've made by switching down to a smaller and lighter wheel. I swapped the Grove over to the Hunt Adventure Carbons, which shaved 300 grams off the total weight, but by the time I'd added those 650 by 48 tires on, that had been completely offset and the bike weighed basically the same. Things do start to change once you get into the big 700C tires, so 45 and 50 is going to be heavier than a 650 by 50 obviously, and this is where the question starts to get a little bit crazy, and you should just forget about weight altogether, just buy the tires that you want to run. Tire choice is a really crucial consideration and perhaps more important than the question of which wheel size is better. What tires is it that you actually want? Choice is exploding at the moment, but I'd say that 700C has more variety and more options. 650B is starting to catch up, but there is still just less out there. Plenty of tires exist in 700 and 650B size, but not many exist in 650B only. There are brands like Specialized, Continental, Goodyear, and Bontrager who are basically just focusing on 700 and don't have any real 650B gravel options. There are some brands that have a very diverse range of options though. WTB, Pirelli, Donnelly, and Panaracer have a very diverse range. Those are the brands that I would look at to start researching tires because they have so much of both. Okay, time for me to climb off this fence and say what my perfect setup would be if I had to commit to just one for all my riding. And it's got to be 700C with between a 45 and a 50mm tire. That size does cover basically everything that I want to do, from basic cured gravel roads, which are quite good condition, to some of the gnarlier trails that get muddy and are covered in rocks. It'd also be very serviceable for bike packing. It's not going to be a particularly light setup, but you can't have everything. If you're curious about what tire I would want, it's the Pirelli Cinturato Gravel M. I've been testing those in 40 mils recently, and they are just one of the most versatile tread patterns I've ever tested. They manage all-round conditions from dry to muddy, better than anything else that I've tested to date. I'm a big fan of those. There should be a review coming out soon. They currently don't come in a 700 by 50, just a 700 by 45, so Pirelli, if you're watching this, please make that happen and I will buy a set. And guys, that is where I'm gonna wrap this all up. Thank you so much for sticking with me through this. I hope you've managed to find some valuable insight and information in this video. If you liked it, Please subscribe, like, all that sort of stuff. It really helps me out as a small independent channel and I really appreciate it. Let me know what your current setup is and what your dream setup is, because everybody is sort of doing their own thing, and I love that people are finding their own way to sort of suit the riding that they want to do. Leave that in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching. Ride safe, stay healthy, and I'll see you next time.